It's the intel about the next generation of Bulldogs. This is Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger.
Let's go, I'm a Bulldog.
Welcome in, Dawg Nation. I am Kaylee Mansell with Dawg Nation recruiting insider Jeff Sentell. I feel like it's been a while since we previewed a commitment decision, but a big one coming this Sunday for 2028 quarterback Jaden Wade, the number one player in the class of 2028. He's already got the crystal ball to go to Georgia. Is that how you think that this is going to turn out? Georgia gets another number one quarterback?
Well, first of all, Kaylee, he is the number one player in the country for 2028. He's expected to be in Athens on Saturday. So what do you think? If you go visit Georgia, what was the last school he visited? Oh, yeah, that was Georgia. What was the school that was the lead dog in his recruiting process? Oh, yeah, that was Georgia as well.
Following the trail.
There's a lot of breadcrumbs here, Kaylee, and the breadcrumbs are like 500-pound boulders. That's how big they are.
So it's interesting because I feel like the trend lately with quarterbacks is that you reclassify. So currently 2028, we could expect him to reclassify to 2027, which would just put him 1 year behind Jared Curtis. I mean, if he does commit to Georgia, what does that look like down the road with him and Curtis potentially competing? Is this somebody you think is willing to wait?
Yeah, well, first of all, he was waiting at IMG. He waited a couple of years for IMG, Kaylee. And first of all, let's address the elephant in the room. First of all, Georgia doesn't have the best track record with getting those 5 stars through the express lane and on the field. I know some people will see this and they'll go, okay, you're talking about a 2028. We're talking about a very special 2028, the number one prospect, the number one quarterback who's feeling a certain type of way about Georgia even before NIL is even brought in the subject. But if you want to just let the math do the mathing, and like Kelly, you sometimes bring up girl math. I'm going to bring up recruit math, okay? Recruit math is going to be, all right, Gunner gets 2026. Is it Puglisi? Is it Montgomery? Is it Curtis in 2027 behind him? Who gets 2027? Whoa, if Jaden Wade does reclassify, all of a sudden you're like, okay, Jaden Wade's there. Jared Curtis hadn't played yet. Mm-hmm. Neither is Puglisi. Neither is Ryan Montgomery. I mean, I feel like Georgia's chances of holding on to him are best if he sticks in the 2028 class, but we can't begrudge a young man that lives in this economy and this free market society that says, man, I want to go get paid. I want to get paid. So that'll be very interesting to see. I think Georgia fans, I mean, they finally get a 5-star quarterback in Jared Curtis, probably the best one they've gotten since Jared is probably the best one they've gotten since Matt Stafford. Oh, no, they're going to try and back up another one in the 2027 class. Kelly, we know this. 5-star quarterbacks, you usually want a gap year between the two so you can have some separation. And I think this is a story right now because it's going to be a 5-star. It's going to be a big name, but it's going to be like, might give Kirby some gray hair, might give Mike Bobo some gray hair if they have to keep all those guys happy.
You rage baiting Dawg Nation right off the top of the show was not something I anticipated. But regardless of the situation and the history of quarterbacks at the University of Georgia, for them to be able to acquire 2 number one quarterbacks within the class, and for Jaden Wade specifically, the number one player in 2028 overall, I think that's a humongous accomplishment if they can do it. Now, again, that decision comes Sunday, so check out DawgNation.com to find out where Jaden Wade ends up and what that looks like for the future of the Georgia quarterback room.
And Kaylee, I want to say one more thing because somebody might be going, okay, why would this guy choose Georgia? Well, a lot of reasons why. Loves the system, loves the environment. He was already back for the Alabama game. He's coming back for the Texas game. But Georgia likes him a lot. They got him up on the board. They thought he was really smart, sharp for his age. But then here's the good stuff. Grew up in South Central Los Angeles, right around Zach Fort, who's a 2026 commitment in this class. Ellis Robinson, the freshman, redshirt freshman corner. He's in his ear for a while now saying, come to Georgia. And then also you got Nate Frazier, same type of guy, same type of neighborhood already on the team. Like he's got a lot of his boys, and he feels really comfortable already at Georgia.
Well, Jaden Wade is just one of many visitors that are going to head to Athens on Saturday for the big game against Texas. In fact, that's what the first part of today's show is going to revolve around, is the big visitors list. We'll look at 2026s, 2027s, as well as some top target 2028s. Then also, too, in honor of our good friend Justus Terry, who is at Texas, will be on the opposite side of the Dogs this Saturday. We're going to look at some of the recruits that got away from Georgia in the class of 2025, do an update on where their current season stand, and then we're going to hear from a current Georgia player that I thought sent a really good message to some of the in-state guys about why they should stick around in the state of Georgia. Then countdown to signing day coverage starts. We are 21 days out from signing day, so we're going to look at some of the remaining questions that Georgia has in this 2026 class. How do they get those answered, and which ones will come down to the final moments? And then we'll do Mansell's details. Well, we take a look at highlights from the class of 2026. We're really showing some out-of-state love here, too. In-state kids had a bye week, so we're going to really focus on those out-of-state guys. And then, of course, our dog of the week. But let's go ahead and start with our Texas visitors. It's been almost a month since Georgia has played a game in Athens, that last one being Ole Miss. That was a big visitors list, but also, too, this is the last big home game for Georgia. I don't put Charlotte into that category. So not just a chance for Georgia to win on the field, but also off the field as well. I think it's important that we go ahead and start with the guys who could potentially be in a red uniform next year. Let's look at the 2026s. Now, most of the 2026 classes already sort of come to light. So we have guys like Blake Stewart, who recently decommitted from Clemson. He's the 4-star safety. You've got some other guys that you could potentially flip, like the 4-star linebacker, Elijah Littlejohn out of Penn State. Also, Rashawn Junkin, who is committed to Washington. And then you've got Tyreek Jemison, the 3-star interior offensive lineman. I mean, just looking at the 4 names, who has real stakes in this game? Who could potentially see Georgia against Texas and say, you know what, I can see myself being a dog?
Well, first of all, Blake Stewart's very interesting, especially with Georgia. And, are all their DBs that are currently committed going to make it to signing day for various reasons? Kaylee, I think Blake Stewart is an amazing football player. He would already add to a loaded Georgia back-end class. Miami has a lot of the juice right now, so this is a chance for Georgia to get a little bit of that squeeze on its own right, and by hosting him, showing him the love, showing him a great environment. Because if he's seen the environment at Clemson and he's seen the environment at Miami, I think Georgia, the red light, Sanford on Saturday night will definitely impress him. Now, Elijah Littlejohn, again, Shadarius Tootle, who now seems like he's going to stick with Auburn no matter what, saying all the right things. Currently committed to Penn State, right? And then he was in Athens for the Ole Miss game a while back, right after the firing of James Franklin. So this is 2 consecutive Georgia home games. I believe in between that, Glenn Schumann has paid a visit to see him out in North Carolina as well. Mr. Duncan, I think that's interesting. I think he's trying to get out to Georgia. He's currently a Washington commitment right there. That's one of those low burner commits, kind of low potential flip type guys right there. I'll believe it when he gets to Athens. But the last one, Tyreek Jemison, this one's interesting, Kaylee, because he's the number 1 guy on our top targets list. He's a Kentucky decommitment. He's going to be in Athens on back-to-back weekends. This weekend for Texas, but then next weekend for Charlotte. That's for his official visit. And he is still he's still maintaining that the official visit will be for the Charlotte game. Mom and dad are not coming this weekend. Offensive line coach and defensive line coach are coming. So maybe his mom and dad on the football field are coming right now. And then next week, the parents are coming. And he still maintains it's Georgia and Ole Miss. He says a lot of things. I just spoke to him yesterday. A lot of things that make you think, yeah, he's leaning a certain way. But then he also maintains the words neck and neck and even, still need to see when it comes to Georgia and it comes to Ole Miss there down the final stretch.
So in just a moment, we'll look at the 2027s, but specifically for Tyreek, is this one of those things that you think it'll come down to signing day, or would he be willing to make that decision a little bit earlier if he's ready?
I think he'll probably have to make it after the Charlotte game, some point in time, because that's a point where he told me Ole Miss has said they're waiting on him. They're waiting on him before they offer somebody else and go get somebody else. Georgia, Stacey Searles is telling him that you're the last guy we want. Interesting, some naysayers or some sayers of nay, they're going to be like, all right, what about
sayers of nay?
Yeah, I just felt that.
I like that so much better than naysayers.
Sayers of nay. I just felt that just rip out of my frontal cortex right there. So the thing is, I asked him, hey, Jermaine Mitchell just committed, right? Big offensive tackle, JUCO guy, probably a little bit older, probably more likely to play right away. I said, have you noticed any sort of simmering as Georgia hit the brakes in its interest? And he says, no, man, actually, I think they've started to recruit me harder ever since Mitchell made his commitment. So that's good how the staff continues to plug away on this one. But, reality is Mitchell is probably looks like a tackle, more likely to be a guard, whereas I think Jemison is more likely to be a guard anyway. So Georgia obviously needs, can obviously build up the lines a lot stronger. They can never have too many great offensive linemen, especially a big, vicious, aggressive human like Tyreek Jemison.
So now we'll move on to the 2027s. All the visitors on this list particularly are within the top 150 within the 247 composite rankings. We'll go ahead and start with the first group of visitors. So as you can see, just looking at the rankings, number 4, number 7, number 10, number 19, number 24, somebody that we are really familiar with and we've talked so much about is the 5-star edge, DJ Jacobs, in-state, Georgia legacy. Out of every visitor, whether it's 2026, 2027, 2028, is he the most important guy on this list?
Yeah, I would say so. And Kaylee, there's some rumblings. I know we can't print them, we can't put them in headlines, but I think it's inbounds on Before the Hedges hour every Wednesday night to talk about this. I don't know if Georgia's the team to beat anymore with DJ Jacobs.
Ooh.
I think it's probably up in the air, and it might even be an out-of-state team like the Texas A&M Aggies. Might be that. Of course, this is a chance for Georgia to kind of reel him back in, reel him back home a little bit. The last visit he was for Alabama. This visit is again for Texas. So we know one thing, DJ Jacobs likes to play the hits. He likes to see the biggest games. Now, he was at Alabama last weekend. He's been to Notre Dame. He's been to Miami a couple times. He's been to Texas A&M. This is a highly contested recruitment. 24/7 Sports has him as the number 1 player in the class. And if we could flash back, everybody knows DJ Jacobs. Pass rush, built like a dog. Mom and dad are dogs. Great bloodlines there. And then his younger brother, Dawson, is likely to play with him. But this is going to show you, they say, Kaylee, everything's bigger in Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Well, everything is bigger for the visit list for Texas. If we can go back to the list of the slides here, we got these guys. So let me just put this in perspective. Kennedy Brown, number 2 offensive tackle. Come on, Spell. Number 1 running back in the country, and that's the recent Penn State commitment that's really showing a lot of love to Notre Dame right now. Most people think he'll wind up at Notre Dame, but this is Georgia's chance to turn his attention towards the Classic City. Now, you got number 1 edge, DJ Jacobs. Cooper Witten, that's the son of Jason Witten, the longtime Hall of Fame tied in for the Dallas Cowboys. Jason Witten, that's his son. He's the number 1 linebacker. You got Nick Lamar. He's the number 4 wide receiver in the class. He's out of Florida as well. So you got some star-studded guys here for a star-studded weekend against Texas.
And the next page of guys is no different. All really highly ranked 4 stars. A lot of in-state guys as well. You've got Kamari Dorsey, who is currently a Texas A&M commit. He's a safety. Also, KJ Green out of the state of Georgia, the 4-star edge and the 4-star offensive tackle. Elijah Hutchinson. Then you also have got a cornerback and a quarterback. I'm not going to focus too much on that because if the Jaden Wade situation happens, it doesn't look like Georgia would take a quarterback in the class of 2027, but just amongst these guys, number 1, who is more of the top target for you, and number 2, who's most likely on this list to end up becoming a Georgia Bulldog when this signing cycle is over with?
So I think these are tough. I would say probably Hagan, just because Georgia and corners and the pedigree here, but this is going to be one of those Bulldog points of pride, Kaylee. This is going to be a unique factoid right here, okay? Jared Curtis, number 1 quarterback in the country, right? 2026 in Athens on Saturday. Elijah Haven, 5-star, number 1 quarterback in the class of 2027. He's in Athens on Saturday. Jaden Wade, 5-star, number 1 quarterback in the class of 2028. We've got the 3 most in-demand passers of the football in high school football America right now. They're all going to be in Athens on Saturday. Now, Haven is really interesting because he's from Baton Rouge, right? And he's not trending towards LSU at all. He's trending towards Alabama, where he was last week. But only Georgia. Can you imagine Mike Bobo? What's he going to be like? All right, how much time do I give to Curtis? How much time do I give to Wade? And do I even try to think about Elijah Haven here in the mix with all this as well?
Well, I think that's first world problems in a way too, though, because most programs would be blessed to have half as good as quarterback as any of those guys are. So, I know it's a tough decision to make, but at the end of the day, you're not going to turn away that talent.
I heard it described. One of my friends, he's actually in real estate, but one of my friends was like, he said, what first world problems is if you've got 6 homes and you have to figure out which one you want to pay the property taxes for first. I'm like, well, sure, why not? That to me is the definition of what Georgia's doing recruiting quarterbacks this weekend.
All right, we've got more 2027s for you. There's two guys that I want to focus in on specifically, and maybe I don't do a good enough job of talking about the out of state, but there's two on this list in my mind that you absolutely have to have in the class of 2027. The first one is the 4-star running back Andrew Beard. I mean, right there in Georgia's backyard. Georgia does need to have at least 2 running backs in the class of 2027. Missing out on Andrew Beard, I think that's a tremendous loss. So you got to lock him down. He's right there in Athens. And then also the 4-star offensive tackle Joshua Sam Appel, number 126 overall. Again, Georgia just has 1 offensive tackle in 2026. Definitely need to stack that room in 2027. So for me, at least out of these 5 guys, those are the 2 that Georgia can't miss on.
2 great ones to identify there. First of all, again, Georgia, Josh Crawford's going to have a busy day too. We mentioned Kamon Spill, the number 1 running back in the country out of 2027, right? He's going to be there. Then you got Andrew Beard that's going to be there. Prince Avenue Christian.
Coached by Mark Richt's son.
Oh, yeah. John Richt's his head coach. He's went back-to-back over 1,000 yards in the regular season, the past 2 seasons. And then you got Joshua Sam Appel, a guy that is 6'8" 3/4. He can be very official with it because he's tall enough. Most people just round it off to 6'9", but he's like, nah, I am what I am. Georgia has prioritized him for a very long time. He's at Douglas County. He is really wired like the guys Georgia wants to sign. But let's not forget about Bigfoot, Jabias Smith out of Swainsboro, Kaylee. He's got Georgia among his top schools. He says he wants to make his commitment somewhere around basketball season. His other top schools, FSU, South Carolina. But riddle me this. This will be his 4th trip to Georgia this year.
Oh.
To check out a game. And DeMello Jones, his former high school teammate, is already barking in his ear saying, man, it's nice over here. They take care of you over here. So Jabias Smith is another guy. They call him Bigfoot because he used to have very big feet and run over people when he was playing rec ball and everything else. Another in-state backer. This is an inside-the-box backer, a top 100-ish overall prospect. He's also going to be in Athens on Saturday.
I'm glad that you clarified that. We've seen and heard a lot of nicknames on this show, but I'm not thinking that a linebacker has the biggest foot. I'm thinking maybe offensive lineman, offensive tackle. So thank you for providing that clarity because that was going to be my follow-up question. Now let's do 2028s. We've got 2 pages of them for you. We've already talked about the 5-star quarterback, Jaden Wade, number 1 overall, going to make the decision on Sunday. But I want to talk about Gage Weddle out of California, number 27. He's a 5-star, listed as an athlete. What does Georgia see him as?
So he's a safety primarily, but he plays quarterback on his high school team. But Kaylee, this is one of my favorite on the down low NFL players over the last 10 years. Do you remember the name Eric Weddle? Played for the Chargers.
Oh yeah.
That's his dad. That's
his dad?
No, I mean that's it. Yeah.
Weddle
is his dad. And first of all, what a great name, Gage, right? Yeah. Obviously. It's that same Weddle family, those Weddle roots right there. You know that guy was a great safety, a hard hitter, special teams player. He's a 5-star. He's coming in from California as well. And then you see the next list. And again, we're trying to be very top heavy with this because they're going to be a ton of dudes there, like in each class right here. But Kevin Hartsfield's out of he's out of Covington. He's at a Newton High School in Covington. He's seen by many as a top 7 running back in the country in the class of 2028. Trace Hawkins, I'm going to give a shout out to those folks in Northwest Georgia, Calhoun High School, the quarterback there. He's going to be back to see Georgia as well. And then you got Deshaun Simmons. Some of the industry services have Deshaun Simmons as the number 1 linebacker, inside the box linebacker in the country for that 2028 class. So again, Georgia's got a lot of number 1s coming in town on Saturday.
We just went through a ton of names. 2 more things, and then we can move on. And we did a lot of top 150 for the class of 2027. Is there anybody else that we didn't mention? Maybe an under the radar guy that you feel like people should know about? Yeah,
that's a young man from Montezuma, Macon County, home of Roquan Smith, Montezuma, Georgia. I was
thinking South America.
You'd be like, oh my gosh, Kirby's down there in South America. He's getting somebody from Rio.
He's everywhere.
But this guy, we wrote about him this week. Roquan has told him he can trust Kirby. He can trust Kirby's timing. I'm just going to share some facts here that are out there. Noah Parker has reported that he will be at Georgia on Saturday. Noah Parker has reported that he will make his decision at some point this weekend. So, again, another one of those things where you're just like, well, looks like Georgia has lined itself up there to be a strong contender this weekend. Noah Parker, he's got a Final Five. It includes Georgia Tech, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida State. He's also over 1,000 yards as well, about 5'9", 210 pounds. He was in town for the Kentucky game earlier this year, Kaylee, and he looked like he was in love with what he saw on the field.
So last thing, now that we've seen the full visitors list for Texas, amongst the 3 big home games that Georgia has hosted this year with Alabama, Ole Miss, and now Texas, I mean, where would you rank this recruiting visitors list? Is it the biggest one?
I think so. This is a Wednesday list, and these are all really early because plans can change.
Yeah.
Guys could, get a nick in the football game on Friday night, or they could just get tired, or mom or dad who are going with them can't make it. But it feels like this is a little bit bigger, Kaylee, because it has potential for a little bit more. And what I mean by that is it's probably the last one of the year. Georgia they will have an official visitor for the Charlotte game and Tyreek Jemison. But this is the last one with a lot of juice. It's going to be at night. The red lights are going to be out. But I think it also has the potential, and this is a wait and see thing, but there are 2 major parts of Texas's class right now. That is Jaden Johnson, the former Georgia commitment, the defensive lineman currently committed to Texas. Now he's down in Florida, Jalen Johnson. And then also, we've been told to take a look and watch and wonder. Tyler Atkinson, 5-star linebacker, currently committed to Texas. It would be interesting to see if he makes his way to Athenstown as well, just to take a look, just check it out, see how C.J. Allen looks. Those names start popping up, and then the game really is on for Georgia at that point.
The conversation that we are about to have here in just a moment when we discuss the ones that got away in 2025, part of me feels like if we have this conversation next year, we're going to be including Tyler Atkinson on that list. We're going to do that here in a moment. But first, we want to remind you that here on Before the Hedges, we are brought to you by Kroger. We are at the beginning of holiday season, Thanksgiving coming up, Black Friday coming up, Christmas right after that. You're going to be doing a lot of meal prepping or bringing your special dish to the family gathering. And if you're hosting it at your home, maybe look for our friends at Kroger, specifically Kroger Boost, where you get the groceries delivered right to your doorstep. You just put what you want in an app. Somebody delivers it right to your doorstep. On top of that, you also get 2 times the fuel points. So as we get closer and closer into holiday season, make sure you check out your local Kroger for all the things you need for holiday cooking. Or if you are the host, which I commend you, by the way, then you should get Kroger Boost. That way you can have all of these things delivered to your home and just give some more time back to yourself. Okay, so I'm excited to have this conversation about the 2025 in-state recruits that got away and just kind of do a status update on them. Of course, this idea stems from the fact that Justus Terry, which I still have a lot of trauma from that commitment decision. Yeah. He is playing on the other side, of course, the former 5-star defensive lineman who ended up going to Texas at the very last moment. We're going to take a look at him and some of the other guys that Georgia got really close to and just see where their progress is at, and then you'll kind of see where we're going with this as we get closer and closer to the end. But let's start with Justus. I mean, for him specifically, just 2 tackles this year. Now, he has played in 7 games total, but hasn't really been an impactful player for Texas. Now, I get it. Adjusting to the speed of the game, specifically on really any line, offensive line, defensive line in the SEC, is really, really difficult. I feel like Elijah Griffin has really started to get into the rotation for Georgia this year. So for Justus Terry, maybe with Texas, it's just been a matter of waiting. But in some ways, I do feel like Justus Terry missed out because he would have had more quality playing time and quality reps with Georgia this year just because of the inconsistency of the defensive line and now with Jordan Hall injury. So, I don't think it was a talent thing that's holding him back from Texas. It might just be a waiting game, but I do think that if he would have gone to Georgia, he would have just had more playing time and more experience at this point in the season.
I think it's interesting. We all know what changed in the Justus Terry recruitment, where it seemed like he was going to go to Georgia until he very wasn't. And then Kaylee's got a nice little gesture off camera, of course. But here's the thing about Justus. I mean, I think you kind of hit it on the head a little bit, where I think he'd be playing right now more at Georgia, especially after Jordan Big Baby Hall went away. I'll never forget being there in Austin, Texas, and remember how you look up and that was the only time Justus Terry visited Texas off that official visit, and then he just fell in love and everything happened for him there. And it was just like, birds were chirping. But I remember him looking down and seeing Georgia just ravage Texas that game, and Jalen Walker and Michael Williams, guys that were talking to him and telling him, hey, man, come be one of us. And I remember some Georgia players that were just like, when they're walking off the field, they pointed up to him and everything else. I think it will be surreal a little bit for Justus because he's been inside Sanford Stadium about 10 times, I would imagine, for him to be on the opposite sideline in white in that burnt orange on Saturday watching Georgia. And he couldn't help but think about probably what might have happened or what could have been there.
Certainly an intriguing homecoming for Justus Terry.
It's a storyline, no doubt.
But we've got some other names to get to. The next one is also going to be a defensive lineman. It's the 4-star defensive lineman, Kevin Wynn from Greene County, who ended up going to Florida State. Now, he was never a Georgia commit at any point, but there was many conversations that Georgia could potentially get the last-minute flip from Wynn. They didn't. This year for the Seminoles, just 1 pass breakup, 1 tackle on the year. This one's tricky for me because I'm not sure, if he had Justus Terry and Elijah Griffin in front of him, I don't know how much playing time he would have gotten at Georgia, so maybe he ended up making that right decision. But can we just look back at why Georgia wasn't able to get him in the final moments?
Well, I think, Kaylee, what it is, to be quite honest, is these are connected. Kevin basically played a massively strong young man. He's been injured a lot down in Tallahassee as well, but Kevin basically played a zero tech, and that's one of those things Georgia really still doesn't have it totally dialed in that yet. You see Nnamdi Ogboko right now playing a lot as he's kind of growing into the position there as Georgia kind of shuffles in guys. Jordan Big Baby Hall was that guy. Christian Miller was that guy. So Xavier McLeod was that guy. The thing where it got really intriguing is most thought that Kevin looked at it and he was like, I think Justus is probably going to go to Georgia, and then it's Elijah Griffin, and then it's Justus Terry. In some ways, I think if Georgia could have said, hey, we're going to punt on Justus Terry and said, no, you're our guy. We don't expect to sign Justus anymore. I think he probably might be a dog, but he was just kind of wondering about that pecking order. And, one of the overlying things you mentioned, I believe he's been hurt. And I believe he has like 1 tackle on the year. But, this is a situation where I just have to point this out. A lot of these folks that get away from Georgia, I can think going back a lot of years, like James Williams, a safety that went to Miami instead of Georgia. A lot of these guys don't come back to be – now, of course, there's Jeremiah Smiths and there's the Cam Colemans of the world, but there's a lot of them that don't end up being world beaters, and I think they probably would have been a lot better had they have decided to thrive and grind and kind of plug away in the Georgia system. And I think Kevin Wynn's another example. Like, Georgia can never have a lot of defensive linemen, and they really did want him, but he was just kind of sure, like, hey, what am I going to be here? I can be the guy at Florida State, or I could be maybe the zero tech at Georgia, but then there's 2 other freshman defensive linemen that I would be coming in with as well. So I guess he just kind of wanted to find his own place where he was the big fish, so to speak, instead of just kind of recreating the 2021 Georgia defensive line where they had Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter right there.
This next one is tricky. It hits really close to home because we threw a party for the former 4-star running back Usman Kroma, who was a Georgia commit till the final moments when he flipped to Florida State. And here's the thing. In that moment, selfishly I was upset because we made this whole big thing, and watching his videos and seeing his interviews, he was incredible. But he has made a difference for Florida State, or maybe Florida State's made a difference for him this year. 52 carries for 310 yards, also 8 receptions for 144 yards, plus a receiving touchdown. He's played in every single game for Florida State up until this point. So, I think that this is one of those situations where he had to do what was best for him, because we talked so much about Bo Walker in the preseason, and we haven't seen Bo Walker hardly at all. I mean, Nate Frazier, Chauncey Bowens, Dwight Phillips Jr., they've really been the core of this running back room, and so I'm not sure that he would have gotten the same opportunity that he did get at Florida State. And, it's all about a waiting game at Georgia. This was someone who clearly couldn't afford to wait. And, even though Florida State's not having the same season as Georgia, his individual numbers are up. And so that's a decision that I can respect, because he's getting the experience and the playing time that he needs to potentially be an NFL back.
I feel like with him, it was very much hot and cold, where it wasn't like, did he feel total love from the entire Georgia staff, like from Kirby and Bobo and Crawford? I guess, from talking to him, he wasn't really sure where he ranked, and then he finally did choose Georgia. And then in the end, somebody else just kept chipping away. You also mentioned the running back rotation at Georgia. Josh McRae is another guy that is getting some of those goal line carries. So it's a very crowded backfield, and Usmani kind of wanted to just jump on the field and make a contribution right away. Now, he's doing that at Florida State, a school that's probably going to see its coach fired in a couple more weeks. But there's kind of just a general theme. Like I mentioned, like Nykar is a great example. You remember Nykar? He has one catch right now for Miami. Carter Nelson, a tight end that Georgia really wanted a couple years back. He has one catch right now for Nebraska. Another name, Williams Winery, a guy that Missouri kind of was the high bidder for, right? That didn't work out at all. He's currently at Nebraska. So, like a lot of these guys, you sit there and you wonder what they would be at Georgia, and we'll never know. But we know also that some of their high school potential has kind of ebbed a little bit when they've spent a couple of years in college football. So let that be a lesson to everybody out there a little bit.
The last guy that we're going to talk about, you could make a case or an argument for maybe he made the better decision or maybe
Probably
he
so.
had a bigger opportunity at Georgia. That's the 5-star offensive tackle David Sanders Jr., or in some case Davis Sanders Jr., depending on who you ask. He did miss the first 4 games as of all due to injury. He started in 2 games since. He's played well for Tennessee, but I think this is one of those things that it was very situational with the health status of Georgia's offensive line. We've seen how much Juan Gaston and Dontrell Glover have been involved, and I do think that very easily could have been David Sanders Jr. in that rotation making a difference. I don't know head-to-head with him and Juan Gaston who would have been better off, but he is getting quality playing time for Tennessee since coming back from injury, so it's really a 50-50 situation, but I don't think that he was willing to take that risk of having to wait. This is someone that clearly wanted to play immediately despite the injury.
Yeah, I think he probably would have played immediately at Georgia. First of all, David, great family, great situation.
Yes.
He got a great offer that I know Georgia was not going to be competitive with what they got from Tennessee. I expect him to be an all-SEC tackle the next 2 years, and it's definitely working out for him. But I'd imagine most Georgia fans, I'd love to hear you guys chime in on the comments. Most Georgia fans would be like, you know what? Tip the hat to David and his family and those stakes he's getting at Tennessee, but I think they're quite enthused and quite happy that they've got Juan Gaston for the next few years. Kaylee, what we're talking about with David Sanders and Juan Gaston, you're really talking about 2 players that I really think will be top 5, top 10 NFL draft picks one day. And the thought of both of them on the Georgia line in 2025 or 2026, perhaps blocking for Jared Curtis, seems a little bit unfair.
So we're going to exclude David Sanders from this part of it, but we did feel like that was somebody that we should mention. Earlier this week, Justus Terry got brought into the conversation at the Georgia press conference, and they basically asked KJ Bolden, as someone who could have gone out of state, pursued other opportunities, but decided to stay, what would be your message to other in-state recruits that are going through the same thing? I thought that KJ Bolden said it perfectly. So here's KJ Bolden from earlier this week on his message to in-state recruits about staying home.
Oh man, I'll say as an in-state recruits, there's no place like this place, man. Coach Smart gonna coach you to the hardest he can. He gonna push you every day. It don't matter if you want to practice, you don't want to be there, or he don't want to be there. It's never gonna seem like that. He gonna push you every day. You're gonna be close by your family. Your family get to come out every week to watch your games, and just playing for the state of Georgia. You from Georgia, you just playing for the state. It brings like a different kind of vibe. Just hearing your name out there on the jumbotron. And just knowing you're a Georgia kid, it just brings a different type of chills, for sure.
I mean, number one, he put it perfectly. This is someone who was in the shoes of going somewhere else, and it came down. I remember you and I sitting in the office, and we're like, oh, my God, we need to go to Buford right now to capture this KJ commitment. And I think that you made a good point that sometimes there's a lot of natural talent in state. They go somewhere else, and that potential is not tapped into enough. The development is not there. So all this natural talent that they had in the first place sometimes doesn't amount to anything. And that's not, a generic assumption. We're not grouping in everyone, but we've seen it plenty of times before. And so I think KJ put it perfectly that Coach Smart is going to push you every single day at practice. And that's why the development at Georgia, that's what they're known for. It's real.
Kelly, here's a take. There's some years when Georgia has the first rounders and they have the All-Americans. I think this is a year for Georgia where culture has really shined.
Yes.
And what I mean by that, I think I said something about this with Brandon on the postgame show after Mississippi State. Like, you see little things all the time. You see, like, how Georgia is so good on mental health and how these players, like, the Dogs, I believe, call it mudita, where, like, they care about seeing their being a big factor in their brother breaking a big play. They care about everyone else's success inside of their own because they know everybody's going to eat. But then you see, which I thought was a great example, Anthony Evans III, and how he was like, jawing with Georgia players during the game. But then afterward, it was all love. They were hugging. Kirby came up and gave him a big hug. They were cutting up a little bit. You could tell there's something that was private said there between the two of them. But then afterward, Kirby Smart said, I love that kid because I coached the dickens out of him. And he always gave everything he wanted. And I think that's why I think the Georgia way, even when it doesn't work out, you see how the things are right now with Gunner. When Gunner gets the fool knocked out of him on a play, and yet he's the first one or the fourth one down there to celebrate with his receiver or his running back in the end zone. I think these are small little ways where all these young players were trying to figure it out, and I think they're starting to really figure it out right now. These are small little ways where you just add up all these culture wins, like what they did with the moms, Kaylee, for Mississippi State, where whoever had the idea that we're going to reach out and talk to all the moms because we got an 11 o'clock kickoff, and we're going to help mom fire our guys up for this game so we're not caught slipping.
At this point, we can go ahead and put the 2025 conversations to rest. We've got 2026s to focus on. Signing day, 21 days out. Questions remain for this 2026 class. So in a moment, we will get to that. But first, if you have been looking for a sign to RSVP for Dawg Nation on tap, this is your sign to do it. The event's going to take place tomorrow night at Terrapin Brewery in Athens from 6 to 9. Myself, Jeff, Connor Riley, Mike Griffith, Brandon Adams, former players, all coming together at Terrapin Brewery in Athens. Again, you do have to RSVP. You see our guests there, Rodrigo Blankenship, John Stinchcomb, Davin Bellamy. It's a free event. First beer is on us. Food is catered by Cercheros. All you have to do is RSVP by going to DawgNation.com/ontap. If you're a procrastinator like myself, or maybe you've just kind of been waiting for a sign, this is it. We hope that you'll join us tomorrow. And then, of course, there's going to be a chance to win tickets to Saturday's big game. So give yourself even a chance to do that by coming to see us at Terrapin Brewery in Athens tomorrow night from 6 to 9. Sign up, DawgNation.com/ontap. I feel like we need to drum roll this.
Tap in.
It's finally here. One of my favorite parts of the year. This is the countdown to signing day.
This is Dawg Nation's countdown to signing day, brought to you by Kroger.
It's like an instant serotonin boost.
It sounds very presidential, like an inauguration, doesn't it?
It does. All right, I think we should just go ahead and get into it. We're going to be doing this the next 3 weeks until signing day comes around, and of course we'll do a signing day special. But the topic of this week's countdown to signing day is what questions remain in the class of 2026, not just players they can acquire or who they need to protect, but some big picture stuff as well. So we're going to get to all of that, starting with flip worries. Most of the offensive side of the ball for 2026 locked down. Good. I believe that Jay Lamar is the only one who hasn't locked down his recruitment, but there are maybe some guys on the defense that could potentially be swayed. I think of guys like Justice Fitzpatrick or a PJ Dean who have not locked down their recruitments. You can go ahead and maybe prove me wrong here, but is there anybody that we should be genuinely concerned about, maybe somebody coming in last minute and swooping them from under the rug?
Yeah, I think first of all we have to put in a disclaimer here. We do not feel Jared Curtis will flip to the Vanderbilt Commodores. Yeah. If you've seen some of our reporting recently, I spoke to the agent and representation. There's not even a official monetary NIL offer on the table yet. So that really says a lot right there, especially because how much Jared and his family really love Georgia. They want to center the next 3 falls of their lives around Athens. I don't know if really the things left for Georgia include the word flip. There's going to be some talk, will Georgia make a final run at Tyler Atkinson? Will the price tag go up? Will Georgia find more incentives for Tyler? I don't really see that happening, but I never say never. You've got, some late action at certain position groups that I think are really thin, but I don't even really see Georgia going after. I don't see them going after a big name running back late in the class, even though they've only got one, because I think that would get very expensive, Kaylee. And I think some guys like Amari Latimer, we saw Fatboy Wiggins, Quantavious Wiggins, just flip from Florida International to Wisconsin this week. So you've got I don't know if there's a lot of intrigue here. Like I've kind of maintained, Kaylee, this class, the bed was mostly made, and all you're doing was putting pillows on it in the bedroom, only putting a million pillows on it by like July. It was already mostly figured out. So I think most, by and large, there's not a lot. You know, there's an offensive lineman that they might grab that's currently uncommitted. They might, you know, this seems really interesting right now, this Blake Stewart stuff late, because he's talented enough to play and play quickly at Georgia as well. And he just recently decommitted from Clemson, and it feels like Georgia would have to fight Miami for that guy.
Yeah, and then there are some off-the-field incidents that seem like we don't really know the status of that is, you know, when it comes to guys like Seven Cloud or a Chase Calicut, and even potentially someone like Jay Lamar who is back with the team but still could be of concern. You know, is this one of those things where we're going to know something about these guys by signing day, or is it just a matter of it fizzling out?
I think it's going to be inertia. And what I mean by that is, first of all, Georgia doesn't, you know, they don't encourage a kid to, you know, hey, there's no public stance about, hey, I need to decommit from Georgia or whatever, especially with these off the field situations that won't be resolved by December the 3rd. I think what it's going to be, what I mean by inertia, is they're just going to get the picture that they weren't sent a scholarship offer and they're not hearing from Georgia. You know, in the case of Seven Cloud, man, that is a tough story. I mean, he's not even played at all this year for his junior college team at all, not produced any stats. So he's still not even playing football, which was a really big positive in his life. And then you've got, you know, Chase Calicut with these charges. And I know people close to that situation tell me that Chase is going to find a way to play for Georgia one day. But, you know, that's something that I just don't see happening right now. And we've never really had to do this. I think Jay Lamar has kind of gotten back on solid ground because he's still a member of his high school football team. And, you know, when you don't finish this season on your high school football team, Kelly, that's kind of like the base level for being a college football player. Like, you fail high school football when you don't finish the year with your high school team for whatever reason. So, you know, I think Jay Lamar is good. He's kind of playing in a limited role for Colquitt, but he's working his way back on the team. So with a lot of these guys, I mean, unfortunately, you're just going to see them not sign with Georgia. And then do they sign anywhere else? Do they wait? Do they wonder? You know, I think that's the things to watch. But we've never really had to look at the class and say, okay, that guy's a really good football player. He's good enough to play at Georgia, but this off-the-field stuff has put in a dark cloud over his future.
Well, as you mentioned, for the most part, over the last few months, this class has pretty much been set in stone, and I feel like it's been like that for a lot of other college football programs. So, I mean, at this point, are there any big players left, maybe guys where they committed to a program that no longer has a coach and are maybe still up for grabs, like any big rocks or big players left at this point in the class?
Well, a lot of them, what makes it different now, Kaylee, is that it's not just a feeling. It's not just a gut, because a lot of these guys have already kind of locked in and claimed their spot in some places with some NIL already before the deadline that came over the summer. So, like, you know, Elijah Littlejohn is a name. You're going to see a lot of maybe the potential traction for Georgia around guys where the head coach is no longer there, has been displaced. And Kaylee, let's not forget this, how it may get crazy the last couple of weeks in November and then the first week of December is, Kaylee, when all these jobs get filled, they usually get filled by current standing head coaches. So that means, you know, who's the new coach at LSU, who's the new coach at Florida, who's the new coach at Virginia Tech, who's the new coach at Arkansas, does the FSU job come open? You know, who takes the job at Auburn? I think a lot of these decisions will then create pockets of opening where, okay, if it's not at the school that's filling the job, well, there's a vacancy, there's a vacuum created from where that guy left that will also make it very interesting, potentially with some players late.
So last thing, Georgia currently sits at number 2 in the 247 composite 2026 recruiting rankings. We've seen them go as high as 1, but I mean, at this point, number 1, do they have the chance to get to 1? Does anybody have the chance to surpass Georgia, knocking them down? And should people even really care?
Well, I think what's interesting, you see Ohio State, which is a major player at the table with a lot of chips, and they've went about flipping guys left and right over the last month or so. They flipped Legend Bay. You remember that name? Legend Bay just flipped from, I believe, Tennessee to Ohio State, and he had a Georgia offer. You see them target like Wake Forest commitments, Duke commitments, other schools like that, where they're deciding, okay, this guy's playing a lot better than we had him evaluated as a senior. Let's go after him, because it's harder and harder to get a lot of those top guys. Like Ohio State didn't have a juggernaut heavyweight class filled with like 4 or 5 5-stars this year because it's so very hard to do. I think Alabama is a school that's right there knocking on Georgia's door a little bit, but they don't have a lot of work left to do either. I think USC is going to stay number 1 simply because they have 2 or 3 more commitments.
5 more.
Yeah, commitments than Georgia. And you can't see Georgia making up that gap, even with a big, huge flip out of the blue or two.
All right, so that is the questions left for the 2026 cycle. Of course, we're going to have more signing day related things as we get closer and closer. I can't even believe that it's this close
3
at
weeks.
this point. That's insane. So we'll have more coverage coming your way for countdown to signing day. We still have Mansell's details and Dog of the Week to get to. But first, I'm really excited to host Jeff on Dawg Nation Game Day this weekend because we're going to break down all the recruiting numbers between Georgia and Texas, 2 teams that have had very similar experiences on the trail, especially looking at the last 3 or 4 cycles. So when the talent is even, what does it come down to? That's what I'm going to talk to Jeff about. So I hope you'll join us for Dawg Nation Game Day on Saturday. It starts at 5:30. But if you're coming to Athens, come by and see us. We'll be at the downtown location for Jittery Joe's. So either watch us online or come by and see us in person. It's really the last big home game for Georgia, so we're going to bring that energy. Really, really excited about that, and I hope that you will join us at 5:30. Okay. Whew. We are finally to the point in the show where we get to show you some real football. This is Mansell's Details. All right, so every guy in the class that plays football in the state of Georgia had a bye week. They're not included. A lot of out-of-state love. So what we're going to do is go ahead and start with the 2 tight ends. We're going to focus on Lincoln Keys first. He had 2 touchdowns on the night. We're going to show it to you both here. So I want you to really pay attention to not just the catches and the touchdown, but his blockers, man. The blockers for him are fantastic. It looks like Georgia guys blocking out there. So this is clearly someone that understands the importance of not just pass catching for tight end production, but also blocking as well. Right here, head-to-head contact, finds a way to get into the end zone. So you see that he likes that right there. That's what you want out of a tight end, a guy who's not afraid of that contact.
I feel sorry for those poor dudes that were in his way like bowling pins. You see somebody schemed up a ball play right there. They're basically rollouts. Catch the guy underneath, and like that poor little corner gets a hat on a hat, but he's not going to stop Lincoln Keys. And again, Lincoln Keys, just outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, his team, Saline, has improved to, I believe, 10-1 on the year now. Still very much alive. This was a 40-point win last week.
So he finishes the night with 3 receptions for 43 yards and the 2 touchdowns that we just showed you, and a 57-17 win. Now we're going to move on to another tight end in the class. This is Braden Fogel. Now listen, watch this play right here. All right, going into the end zone, over the defender, diving catch, manages to stay in bounds, which I think is actually the most impressive part of this entire thing. But I don't know if it was the purple. I don't know if it was the contention ball. It was giving very much Brady Marchese to me.
Yeah, so here's the cool thing about Mr. Fogel, who also punts for his high school team, I believe. Now, this was a loss, but you see him right there go up and get the ball. Really great ball skills. You just imagine the level of talent that Georgia's still going to have. Like, you get shades a little bit. Like, this was sort of in the zip code a little bit of turning and twisting your body. That's sort of what Elias Williams did last week. And then you see that previous clip with Lincoln Keys. Well, that's an Oscar Delp special right there. Running over dudes. Are you going to try and tackle me? No. And, like, again, this is the future of that room. And, Kaylee, it's funny, I was swapping messages with Braden this week. This is the first time he may not have to stay up the entire night when he takes a red eye from Columbus or Cleveland, Ohio, in order to get to Georgia for a game because it's a 7 o'clock kick. Unfortunately, Lexington and Braden Fogel did not win last week, so his season is over. It's crazy to think about. We got some dogs that are already, their high school seasons have already hit their close.
All right, so everybody loves big man highlights. We're going to look at the offensive tackle, Ekigne Oboka, right there on the edge. Watch him drive this defender back. I mean, that has to be like 10 yards to the 50, right?
Yeah, he's taking him for a ride. He's got an Uber account with him right there. Kaylee, this is the tackle for Georgia's 2026 class. 6'6", about 305. He's definitely looks the part. He's engaged. He's got pad level. He's underneath this guy. And normally, Kaylee, when you move the guy 10 yards off the ball and the ball's going off your hip pad, then that usually equals a first down.
And what's crazy for Ekene, like him pushing the defender back so many yards, that's like every play on his highlight tape. This one here goes all the way back to the 20. Like, this is someone that just clearly craves physical contact, is very fearless in the way that he blocks. I cannot wait to see him in a Georgia uniform, man.
This is what I watch when I'm really popping some popcorn, right? There's a point here. Watch this. He gets like 30 yards downfield, 25 yards downfield before his back passes him on this highlight, on this block right there. And then you want some more Ekene all day? Check this out. He's moving.
All right, and then what we'll do, that's going to wrap up our Mansell's details. I want to go ahead and get to our Dawg of the Week.
I'm a big dog, no leash, you all part, no teeth. That's a whole lot of wins on me. That's a whole lot of wins on me.
We got a defensive player for this week's Dawg of the Week. That is the 4-star linebacker Nick Abrams out of Owings Mills, Maryland. On the night, 3 sacks, 10 tackles, and a 24-14 win. We've got some incredible plays to show you from Nick Abrams right there on the edge. Quarterback sack. He just moves so quickly.
Can I believe this is at least his second Dawg of the Week for this season? And, you know, one of the things, he's on the guy real quickly. He does a little bit of everything, Kaylee.
Yeah.
He's got 2 pick sixes this year. And this is a stout little mess of highlights right here for Nick. Even on a week where 19 commitments were off on buys, he certainly had enough plays to make a deserving candidate for any week as the Dawg of the Week.
Yeah, I actually think that this next play that we have from Nick Abrams is by far not just the most impressive of all these that we have, but maybe this entire season. He's got 2 defenders on him and still finds a way to get to the quarterback. One of the guys that he's going up against is clearly bigger than him. They have to put 2 guys on him. That doesn't mean a thing. He still gets the job done, Jeff.
Yeah, he kind of kept pushing him back, and then the pocket was compressed, and then the quarterback tried to see, like, let me step up, let me see if I can find something, and oh yeah, there was Nick Abrams the second right there gobbling him up.
All right, we've got one more to show you from Nick Abrams. This was another one of his sacks on the night. I mean, just blows right past the guy, gets to the quarterback. And you have to understand, you're at this point in the season where you know exactly what you're getting. You've watched the tape on Nick Abrams. You should have a good game plan in mind. Didn't do it.
Kaylee, this is called ball get off right here. He just basically comes out of his stance. He's standing up off the line, and he's like, I'm going to beat you to that spot behind the quarterback's ear. And that guy, that poor right tackle, he's like, uh-oh, I'm going to hear about that in the film room.
So, Nick Abrams, you are our Before the Hedges Dawg of the Week. In just a moment, we'll take a look at the top targets for the class of 2026. A lot of those names we mentioned earlier, but definitely want to get to those. We ask that you do us a favor here on Dawg Nation. One of the things that you can do to help us is subscribing to our Dawg Nation YouTube page if you haven't already. You'll get notified when we go live if you hit that bell. And also, it's just a thank you to us, and it helps us with our numbers. So if you've stuck around this long, clearly this is a show that you enjoy watching. And so it would be a really big thanks to us, and we would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and also like this video if you like what we have to say. Even if you don't, just give us the like. So appreciate you guys being with us each and every week. Now, I do want to get to the 2026 top targets. We've got 2 pages to show you. We've really started to trim down the list.
Yeah.
So we've got 5 through 10 to start with. Now, there are 2 guys on this list who UGA has yet to offer. So I guess my question is, why do we continue to put these guys up there? And is there a likelihood that one of these guys is eventually going to get the call?
I don't know if that's going to happen, Kaylee. It's getting really late. Obviously, Georgia could sit there and then they weigh, do we need another high school player here versus going to get somebody in the portal at certain spots of needs? I think, look at the running back, for instance. Ty Cummings is the leader right now in the state of Georgia for the regular season, over 2,100 yards. I believe he averaged 13 yards a carry, but he's slightly undersized. He's committed to Georgia Southern, and it's one of those things where you just wonder if it's ever going to happen. Not likely. You see Will Rajecki, that's a guy that has an offer from Georgia, and yet you don't really see a lot of traction with him there as well on that list. And then another name, Amari Latimer, on that list. Kaylee, I've thought for a while that would have been a good match for Georgia, but it's not going to happen. He's not going to be in Athens for the Texas game, and after that, I don't really think that that's possible. If you want to be honest, complete clarity, I don't really expect any of these 5 names to be Dogs. If I had to say one on a wild hair, it might be Ty Cummings.
All right, so now let's look at the top 5. So the number 1 remains the same. You've got 2 guys that move up. It's Colin Bussey, Rashawn Duncan, the Washington commit. I mean, it looks like Tyreek Jemison. That is a good potential to happen. I mean, really, anybody else on this list?
You see Little John keeps coming back, and that's obviously Georgia needs another high school linebacker in this class. Shadarius Tootle flipped to Auburn, and right now that's still got some staying power even through the interim coach. I really think Blake Stewart is a guy we're going to know if there's a shot with Blake Stewart after this visit this weekend for Texas, because he's going to see a great environment. Georgia's going to say, we'd love to have you in the class. We do have some room at defensive back, and Blake, he could play everywhere. He could play a star. He could play a safety. I mean, the thought of him in the same secondary with guys like Tyreek Green or Jordan Smith or KJ Bolden, that's pretty good for Georgia. That would be a stout secondary back end.
All right, so we want to thank you so much for joining us here on Before the Hedges. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Jeff Sintel. We hope to see you tomorrow night at Terrapin Brewery in Athens. If not, we hope to see you for Dawg Nation game day on Saturday. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with more Countdown to Signing Day coverage next Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
Let's go. I'm a bulldog. So Georgia, who I'm picking. I love the family atmosphere and the way they handle business. Education is